We're working on Grade 3, Module 6, or graphs. Our topic today is 1 and 2 step questions about graphs input page. All right, let's get started. We can use the information from blank to answer questions. We can use the information from graphs to answer questions. So we can use the information from graphs to answer questions. Some questions are one step. These questions can be answered by blank or blank once, by adding or subtracting once. Okay, so one-step questions can be answered by adding or subtracting once. A one-step question will only have 2 categories in the problem. So not 2 categories in the graph. You might have 6 categories in the graph, or 4, or however many. But your question is only going to ask you about 2 of them, okay? Or maybe even 1, depending on the question. But it's not going to ask you about more than 2, because that would turn it into a 2-step problem. Okay, let's look at our next question. Some questions are 2-step. These questions can be answered by blank or blank twice, adding or subtracting. So you're doing the same thing, you're just doing it more than once. So some questions you need to add or subtract twice, okay? Adding or subtracting twice. A 2-step question will have 3 or more categories in the problem. So these are just some clues to help you if you're unsure if a problem is a 1-step or a 2-step. These are things you can look for. All right, so now we have a graph here. It says pie sales at the fair, or at fair, and it has numbers sold, type of pie. All right, so let's look at the questions and answer them using this graph. How many more apple pies were sold than pumpkin pies? So notice that I only have 2 categories here. I have apple pies and pumpkin pies, and I went ahead and underlined them to show I only have 2 kinds. Okay, so I know this is going to be a 1-step. So on the side, I'm going to write 1 step to show that I really understand that I only need to add or subtract once to find the answer. All right, so how many more apple pies were sold than pumpkin pies? Well, I'm going to look on my graph, and I see that 100 apple pies were sold. So 100 apple pies. Now I'm going to look at pumpkin pies. Only 50 pumpkin pies were sold. So I can subtract 50 pumpkin pies. And if I subtract that, I find I have 50 more apple pies. And I will show you what my work looks like. I did a lot of labeling so that whoever was looking at my work would understand exactly what I did. All right, let's look at number 2. How many more cherry and chocolate pies were sold than pumpkin pies? Notice I have 3 categories here. I'm going to underline them. Cherry, chocolate, and pumpkin. Since I have 3 categories, it's going to be a 2-step problem. So I'm going to label it as 2-step. All right, now I'm going to look at my categories. So notice that it says how many more cherry and chocolate pies. That and tells me I have to add. So I'm going to put a little plus sign above and I will show that to you. Okay? So how many cherry pies did they sell? Wow, 125. And I have to write small because I have a lot to do here. So 105 cherry plus how many chocolate pies? Oh, wow, 150 chocolate. And that equals 275 cherry and chocolate. Okay, so that's step 1. Now it's time for step 2. How many more were sold than pumpkin pies? So how many more tells me I'm going to subtract. Sorry about that. Okay, so I'm going to subtract, and I'm going to put 275 cherry and chocolate minus how many pumpkin pies? 50 pumpkin pies. do that subtraction, I get 225 more cherry and chocolate. Okay, and I'm going to hold this up for you. I'm going to mute that so we don't get another beep. Okay, so you can see my work is very small because I had to fit a lot in there. All right, last question. How many fewer cherry pies were sold than apple and pumpkin pies? Okay, again, I have 3 categories: cherry, apple, pumpkin. So I know it has to be a 2-step. Now I need to know which parts I'm going to put together. So I'm looking for the and. Notice there's and between apple and pumpkin. So I know I'm going to have to add apple and pumpkin together. I'm going to do that first. All right, apple, there were 100 apple pies plus 50 pumpkin pies. So if I add that together, I get 150 apple and pumpkin. Okay, now I want to know how many fewer. When I see fewer, I know I have to subtract as well. So let's look how many cherry pies there are. 125, so that's definitely fewer. I want the smaller number to go second. So I'm going to start with 150 apple and pumpkin. And I'm going to subtract 125 cherry. And I would get 25. Notice the question asked for fewer, so I'm going to label this as fewer cherry. And I could add pies if I wanted. Or if I had lots of space and I was doing this on an assessment and my teacher told me to, I would answer in a complete sentence. Okay? But we are just practicing. We're seeing how we think our way through these problems and how we know, is it 1-step or 2-step, because that can be confusing. All right, that's it for the input page. It's time to work on the output page, and I'll see you next time.